Between 1939 and 1945, 70 to 85 million human beings died. That represented roughly 3% of the entire global population at the time, erased in just 6 years. That number is so large it almost stops registering in the human brain. To put it in perspective, if you spent exactly 1 second mourning every single person who died in this conflict, it would take you 2 years, 3 months, and 17 days of non-stop, sleepless grieving. The United Nations, modern international law, and the global alliance networks we recognize today emerged from this wreckage as survival mechanisms. They were constructed to ensure a slaughter of this scale could never happen again. To understand how the globe fractured, you have to look at how the previous war ended. At the 1919 Paris Peace Conference, the victorious Allies forced Germany to sign the Treaty of Versailles. Germany was stripped of its territory, its military was dismantled, and it was handed a crushing bill of 132 billion gold marks in war reparations. The resulting economic collapse devastated the Weimar Republic. By 1923, Germany experienced severe hyperinflation, a rapid, uncontrollable devaluation of currency. Life savings vanished overnight. Money became so worthless that a single loaf of bread cost 200 billion marks, and children literally used blocks of cash as toys. Just as the country tried to stabilize, the 1929 Wall Street crash hit. The Great Depression spread outward from America, freezing global trade. In Germany, unemployment violently shot past 6 million, and families starved in the streets. These cascading economic and national humiliations created a psychological vacuum. The population was exhausted, furious, and increasingly desperate for anyone who could offer a simple solution to their suffering. Into this void stepped Adolf Hitler. He was a highly skilled orator who absorbed the nation's trauma and weaponized it. He gave the suffering population a false scapegoat, blaming Jewish people, Marxists, and political enemies for every hardship the country faced. The Nazi Party used the mechanics of the democratic system to legitimize their movement. By the 1932 elections, they had become the largest party in the German parliament. On January 30th, 1933, Hitler was legally appointed Chancellor of Germany. Once inside the government, he immediately dismantled the system from within. Using a fire of the parliament building as a pretext, he suspended civil liberties, imprisoned political opponents, and merged the highest offices of government. In less than 18 months, Germany was a total dictatorship. This transition happened within a culturally sophisticated, educated democracy. It stands as a reminder that absolute power was granted willingly, in exchange for the promise of stability and pride. This animated map shows the borders of Central Europe in the mid-1930s. Hitler began aggressively testing the boundaries of the Versailles Treaty. In 1936, German troops marched into the demilitarized Rhineland. In 1938, they absorbed Austria. The international community watched and did nothing to stop him. Britain and France adopted a policy of appeasement, the practice of making material concessions to an aggressive power in order to avoid conflict. To prevent another war, they agreed to let Germany take the Sudetenland, and eventually all of Czechoslovakia, without even inviting Czechoslovakia to the negotiations. British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain returned to London waving the Munich Agreement, famously declaring to cheering crowds that he had secured peace for our time. 6 months later, Hitler's forces occupied the rest of the Czech territory. On September 1st, 1939, 1.5 million German soldiers crossed the Polish border. They utilized blitzkrieg, a rapid, highly coordinated military tactic, combining tanks, air support, and motorized infantry to overwhelm the enemy. 2 days later, Britain and France finally declared war. The conflict violently expanded across the globe. Germany's invasion of the Soviet Union opened a brutal Eastern Front, and Japan's surprise strike on the American naval base at Pearl Harbor forced the immense industrial and military capacity of the United States into war. The failure of the Munich Agreement is studied in every political science course today. It proves that refusing to confront early aggressions almost always guarantees a significantly more destructive war down the line. We have to pause the military timeline here. Behind the front lines, the Nazi regime orchestrated the Holocaust, the deliberate, state-sponsored, and industrialized murder of 11 million people. This included 6 million Jewish people, alongside Roma, disabled individuals, LGBTQ+ citizens, and political prisoners. This systematic murder was a multi-stage process. It began with rhetoric labeling neighbors as the enemy within. In 1935, the Nuremberg laws stripped Jewish Germans of their citizenship. In 1938, the violence of Kristallnacht saw thousands of businesses destroyed in a single night. By the time the Wannsee Conference coordinated the final solution in 1942, years of propaganda had erased the victims' humanity from the public consciousness. This process was made possible by the quiet complicity of millions. Extraordinary evil relied on ordinary people making the daily choice to look away. By 1944, the strategic tide turned against the Axis powers. The Soviet Red Army drove forward with terrifying momentum from the east, while 156,000 Allied troops launched the D-Day seaborne invasion from the west, fighting through the brutal surf of Normandy to begin the liberation of Europe. Germany was crushed simultaneously from both sides. By April 1945, Soviet forces were fighting street by street through the capital. Surrounded by the absolute ruin of Berlin, Hitler took his own life in an underground bunker, and the Nazi regime collapsed entirely. In the Pacific, military planners estimated an invasion of the Japanese home islands would cost up to 1 million American lives, alongside massive civilian casualties. Instead, the United States deployed a secret weapon developed over 3 years, the atomic bomb. The detonations over Hiroshima and Nagasaki forced Japan to surrender, halting the combat. But the existence of the atomic bomb altered humanity's relationship with warfare. From that moment forward, the world held the mechanical capacity for total self-annihilation. Following the surrender, the Allies established a new legal precedent at the Nuremberg trials. For the first time, defeated national leaders were held criminally accountable. It established the permanent principle that following orders is never a legal defense for committing war crimes. The world that emerged was deliberately engineered to prevent the conditions of the 1930s. The United Nations was formed to mediate state conflicts, and the American Marshall Plan injected billions of dollars to reconstruct Western Europe, ensuring that poverty and desperation could not fuel another rise of fascism. But the systems built to protect us are only as strong as the people who maintain them. Democracy is inherently fragile. It has to be actively defended in courts, in classrooms, and in daily conversations whenever authoritarian rhetoric and the language of hate attempt to normalize themselves again. History rests on the specific choices made by individual people, the soldiers on the beaches, the families hiding neighbors, and the citizens deciding whether to speak out or stay silent. Their actions determined the shape of our world.